Today we're going to be working on solving equations involving rational numbers. Now just to review a little bit, rational numbers are integers, positive and negative numbers, but they also include decimals and fractions. Let's review the steps for solving an equation. The first thing we need to do is ask yourself a question. What is being done to your variable? And that variable could be an x, an n, a y, or an m, any letter that we call the variable or the unknown. Once you can answer that question, then you're going to go to step 2. You're going to do the inverse operation or the opposite operation to both sides of the equation. And then the final step is to check your answer. All right, so let's try one. We have the problem x divided by 12 equals 3. Okay, the first question is, what is being done to the variable? What is being done to Mr. X? He's being divided by 12. Okay, so step 2 says do the inverse or opposite operation. Well, what's the opposite of dividing by 12? We're multiplying by 12. So multiply both sides by 12. Okay, we're left with x on this side. And then what is 3 times 12? Great, 36. Okay, now the third step is to check your answer. So we're going to plug this value in, 36. 36 divided by 12, is that 3? Yes, it is. All right, so we're good to go. Now that one just included a whole number. Look at the next example. X divided by 2 4/10 equals 6. Now we have a decimal that's involved. We still follow the same steps. Step 1, what's being done to my variable? Okay, it's being divided by 2 4/10. Good. So we're going to do the opposite or inverse of that. What's the opposite or inverse of dividing by 2 4/10? Multiplying by 2 4/10. Okay, so we're left with x on this side. And over here, let's do the math. 2 4/10 times 6. And what do I do at this decimal point? And you can use estimation to see if it's close. I think you had one on your ELO, something like this, that you had decimals. What is 2 times 6? 12. So this should be close to 12. It's not going to be 1 point something, and it's not going to be 144. It's 14 4/10. And again, to check, if I took 14 4/10 divided by 2 4/10, do I get 6? Yes. Right now, let's take a look at some that deal with fractions. This one is 2/5 times t equals 12/25. Now the first question is, what's being done to my variable? I am multiplying t by 2/5, and sometimes you may see parentheses around it like this, or around the t, and that means that there's multiplication going on. Okay, so step 2 is, what's the inverse or opposite of multiplying by 2/5? We're dividing both sides by 2/5. Okay, so when we actually divide fractions, you're multiplying by its reciprocal. We call it the multiplicative inverse. So I know that I'm left with t on this side, but let's do the math over here. We have 12/25, and when I divide, I go to KFC, keep the first the same. Which one am I going to flip? The second one, which is your divisor. So this will be 5/2, and I change the sign to multiply. Okay, now look at my multiplication. I need to see if I can simplify first, and I can. Can I simplify this way? Divide them both by 2. And then I multiply. 6 times 1 is 6. 5 times 1 is 5. That's improper, so change it to a mixed number. And what do you get? 1 1/5. Okay, then we can plug it back in. We can take 2/5 times, actually be 6/5, gives you 12/25. That does work. Okay, so we did step 3 is checking our answer. All right, let's try one more. You try this next one. 1/4 t equals 3/8. When you have a solution, raise your hand and I'll come around and check you. And then you can check your partner. Okay, the first step was to ask yourself, what's being done to my variable? He's being multiplied by 1/4. So the opposite of that would be to divide both sides by 1/4. And I kind of draw a big line to show that. Okay, any number divided by itself would be 1. So I'm left with t equals, and over here I have 3/8 times, and I flip the divisor, 4 over 1. Simplify before you multiply, and I get 3/2, which is the same as 1 and 1/2. Final answer. So let's check it out. If I had 1/4 times 3/2, do I get 3/8? Yes, you do. Okay, another term that I know we've had in your notes, but just let's review again, is the multiplicative inverse or the reciprocal. That's what we used in the last two problems, that when you divide, you actually multiply by its reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2 over 1. The reciprocal of 5 is going to be 1/5, because this is 5 over 1. The reciprocal of 4 and 1/2, well, we have to change it first to an improper fraction. And I get 9/2, so the reciprocal of that would be 2/9. And another word is the multiplicative inverse, just so you get familiar with that. All right, now let's try a word problem. Samantha answered 4/5 of the questions on the science quiz correctly. If she answered 8 questions correctly, how many questions were on the quiz? Let's try to identify some of the key words being used here. Okay, she answered 4/5 of the questions on the science quiz. Then it says if she answered 8 questions correctly. Okay, so we know she answered 8 questions correctly. What is it that we don't know? How many were on the whole quiz? So you're thinking, okay, I don't know how many's in the whole thing, but 4/5 are part of the whole thing is 8. In our key words that we use, whether you're add, subtract, multiply, divide, do you see any key word here to help you indicate what operation is being done? It's right here. You got of. 4/5 of the questions. So you're saying 4/5 times however many questions are in the whole quiz will be 8 questions. So this is like an equation. 4/5 times the number of questions equals 8. What will I do to solve? Divide both sides by 4/5. Okay, and when you divide, what do you actually do? You end up multiplying by the divisor's reciprocal. So I'm going to have 8 over 1, flip the second one, 5/4, and change the sign to multiply. Now I can simplify before I multiply, and I have 10 over 1, or 10. So does it make sense that I would have 10 questions on this quiz if I got 4/5 right or got 8 questions correct? By the way, what is 4/5 as a percent? That was on our list to memorize. Good, it's 80%. So if I got 8 out of 10, would that be 80%? It sure would. Okay, so that's how you can kind of check your answer. All right, that concludes our lesson on solving equations that involve rational numbers.